Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. And today, going to be doing a tasting of Heavenhill's Old Style Bourbon, green label, aged 6 years. Now, how much do you think a bottle of this whiskey would set you back? 6-year whiskey, age stated. How about $12.99? Yes, it's true. That's how much I paid for this whiskey. I don't know if it's still $12.99, but it was $12.99 when I bought it probably a year and a half ago. And I bought a couple bottles of it, in fact, and so here I am on my second bottle now. There's this thing with Heavenhill that they have certain whiskeys that are only available in certain regions or just in Kentucky. And so one of the whiskeys I'm hearing a rumor of that may be going to just Kentucky is this single barrel version of Evan Williams, which is a really nice whiskey also. And maybe this is due to supply, who knows why, but for some reason, this green label has only been available in Kentucky. There was another one that was a 6-year that was bottled in bond that was amazing. And again, I think it was around $15 to $18 a bottle, a great bargain, but they took that off the market and then released a 7-year version of it. And that's what you see in the white labels in many more states than just Kentucky. And I think a lot of people have discovered the Heavenhill name who may have known their other brands like Evan Williams, Elijah Craig, JTS Brown, those names, Henry McKenna, that suddenly went, oh, what is this Heavenhill thing? And then now we look at the back of the labels of these other whiskeys and realize that all of these whiskeys are coming from Heavenhill out of Bardstown. So I thought I'd give you a little history on the name Heavenhill, since the other names like Elijah Craig, he's, according to their marketing, father of bourbon, and here's why: he apparently had a fire in his barn and it burned the inside of his barrels. I don't know about the outside of the barrels, I don't know how you just burn the inside of the barrels, and that's where bourbon came from, because the color and aging in a charcoal barrel would all of a sudden create what is bourbon. Fun story. Is it true? Well, same with Evan Williams, 1783. Was he the first commercial distiller in the judicial district of Kentucky, which was part of Virginia at the time? I haven't seen any definitive facts on that, but that is the rumor. So, and don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Should be what's written underneath any Heavenhill bottle. Because here's the story behind Heavenhill. 1783, same year as Evan Williams was building and now producing whiskey out of his first commercial distillery in the judicial district of Kentucky, there was a woman who was sheltering from an attack by some local natives, and she decided to shelter under a waterfall, which was around the property that now houses the distillery that was built in 1935, there was a distillery built on that site in 1935. There was a big fire there, which is another piece of history we can go into with Heavenhill. But apparently what happened was she gave birth to him under a waterfall in 1783. So another thing that happened in 1783, and his name was William Heavenhill. The last name being one word, not two, like Heavenhill here. But when in 1935, the Shapiro brothers, and there were 5 of them, decided to build a distillery on that property, they looked back to the former resident for their namesake, and they actually named the distillery the Old Heavenhill Springs Distillery, but it evolved over time, and the Old and the Springs disappeared, and now it's just the Heavenhill Distillery. And if you go to Bardstown, They actually had it shut down there for a while. They were doing whiskey connoisseur tastings where you could taste William Heavenhill, which is a brand unto itself that is some, single barrel picked whiskey that they do that's long aged. So if you're ever there and you get a chance to do the Whiskey Connoisseurs tour, if they're still doing that, it's not a tour, it's actually you just sit down in the room and you taste some of their high-end whiskeys like Pikesville and Larceny. They do do they do Larceny? I don't think they do Larceny, no. Anyway, it's like 5 high-end versions of their whiskeys. Or you can do the new tour and you can go see the new facility because it just recently opened up. But let's jump in and do a tasting on this one. And this is actually a, see if we see where it says there. Every drop is charcoal filtered. Now, we talk about chill filtering these days, and we talk about charcoal filtering, and 2 things come to mind. One is there's this big move against filtering whiskey to get the oils out and all that other, and that it kind of creates a lesser whiskey, that it may be less flavorful, that sort of thing. So that's one thing that people talk about. The other is the Lincoln County process, which is where they do charcoal mellowing or leaching of the whiskey. And in the case of Tennessee whiskey, what they do is they do that leaching process as soon as it comes off the still and before it goes in the barrel. And according to Nicole Austin at George Dickel, the reason they do that is to create a more consistent product going into the barrel. Heavenhill, the Evan Williams, if you look at their bottled and bond, that actually is also charcoal filtered. But this one is charcoal filtered after it comes out of the barrel. And that is that point where some people say that what you're doing is you're kind of stripping out some of the character of the whiskey. That said, this is a beloved whiskey. People who know about it think it's one of the greatest values on the market. And so let's do a nosing and tasting of it. And right off the bat, there's a nice, soft, herbally rye that comes in on this, which is interesting because this is and I actually asked Chris Fletcher of Jack Daniels, who I hope to have on the podcast at some time in the near future. I was kind of asking him questions about the use of barley and why certain larger distilleries sometimes use more barley in their recipes than they do rye, because Jack Daniels does that, and so does Heavenhill in this particular case. This is 78% corn. It is 12% malted barley and 10% rye. And so I will ask him that question again when I do the podcast so that you can find out the answer to why they do that. But that is the case here. It is a beautiful nose. That rye blends in nicely with the caramel notes that come in. There is an oak nose on here that's almost like a sawdust kind of a note. There's a little bit of alcohol that comes in on the nose, but it's not overly aggressive. And what's interesting is I don't remember with the bottled and bond really getting that much of an alcohol note on it. So this is a lower proof, but it's still there a little bit. Cheers. Nutty caramel rye cola note that comes out. Nice. Sometimes when I say cola note, it's a combination of nut and cherry that are in there. Really, really nice. Pleasant, easy drinking. Little char, little rye spice lays on the finish. Slight Kentucky hug, not much. But the caramel coats the mouth. I will say that it's probably a little bit thinner than you might expect. It definitely thins out when it gets to the finish, but not that much. and that rye just is, it's really nice. You're left with the caramel, the rye, and a little bit of char on the finish, and it just makes you want to go grab another drink of it. Does the charcoal filtering affect this whiskey? Well, I'd have to taste it against something that wasn't charcoal filtered. But boy, I mean, if the idea is to make a very easy drinker and something that is still flavorful, this is still flavorful. And so it would be interesting to know what this would be like if it didn't go through that charcoal filtering process. But every time I have this, I pour some in my glass and I go, it's a $12.99 bourbon. Really, you know, am I just playing this thing up, or is this actually a really good bourbon? And I think it is. I think this is a very good whiskey. And that's not just for value. I just think it's a very good whiskey. So that is my review of Heavenhill 6-year green label 90 proof. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like if you got good information out of it, if you feel this was helpful in some way. And subscribe if you want to watch more of these videos coming down the road. And until next time, cheers and Slanjava. Nice.